Hi, today I'm going to be making my own underwear. I have made a promise to myself that this year I am not going to buy any new clothes whatsoever, not even from the thrift store. If I want any type of new clothing item, I have to make it myself. All the underwear that I was using is basically dead. As I talked about in my sewing plans video, I have this fabric that I got at the thrift store that I think will work very nice for underwear, and then whatever I don't use for underwear, I'm gonna make a t-shirt out of. Let's talk about fabric choice. This fabric has 4-way stretch and it has good rebound. You can see on this edge here, it's not curling because it has enough structure to maintain the stretch, but then go back and shrink back down to its original size. So this probably has some sort of spandex in it. This is really good for underwear. I'm gonna use this fabric for the main parts of my underwear. I have some cotton t-shirts that are dead, and I'm gonna use those for the gusset, because you wanna have cotton, that more breathable fabric, on your lady bits. And then I have fold over elastic that I bought from DIY Dancewear on Etsy. I've been buying fold over elastic from them for years now, and I really like their quality, and also their prices are really good. They only have shiny ones because it's actually made for dancewear, but it doesn't matter to me because me and my husbands are the only ones who see my underwear, so it's a couple days later. I wanted to talk about the patterns that I'm using and then also my experiences making underwear so far. First pattern that I ever used to make underwear was the acacia pattern, which I am using today. It is a free pattern. You just have to sign up for an emailing list. The first time I made underwear, I used a rayon blend t-shirt and I used elastic that I got at the thrift store, and I did not attach the elastic very well, and the elastic was pretty low quality, and the t-shirt was the wrong material to make underwear out of. So they fell apart pretty quick. When they talk about the type of fabric that you need for your underwear, that's really important. Something that I've found that makes underwear more comfortable for myself and less frustrating to make is I do not use picot elastic. I find it's harder to control. I always use fold over elastic. I got this fold over elastic, there's a lot of it, on Etsy. This is thicker than I would want for making underwear because it is visible through your clothes, but it's also very comfortable and easy to apply. So it just depends what you're looking for when you're making your underwear. The Wednesday Cheekies by Emerald Erin. These I have made quite a few times, and I tried her Friday French cuts as well, but I don't like the finishes on that as well. It's hard to enclose all of the seams so that there's no raw edges, and this one you can enclose all the seams so that there's no raw edges. My hips are 44.5 inches and my waist is 32 inches. That puts me in two different size ranges. What I'm going to do is, because the underwear is mainly on your hips, I'm going to cut out the size that corresponds with my hip measurement. For the acacia underwear, I am making the size 16, and I'll make the size large for the Wednesday Cheeky. Technically, I fit in the extra large size, but because where the Wednesday Cheekies sit, it sits on your high hip, and I'm smaller there than I am on my full hip, obviously. I think that the size large will work perfectly for me. That is a paid pattern. I've used it quite a few times. This is pretty well my go-to underwear pattern. Other things to consider are making sure that you have the proper tools to make sewing underwear easier. Sewing with stretchy material is quite a bit different than sewing with non-stretchy materials. You gotta be very careful when you're sewing it that you don't stretch it so that it doesn't bubble. And you also need to make sure that you have the proper needles on your machine. I use just Schmetz stretch needles. I get these at my local fabric store. So I use it for my bras and my underwear. I use these. And then I also use a walking foot. I got this one from a yard sale, but my machine came with one too. This hooks onto the needle, and while you're sewing, it feeds the fabric through on the top as well as on the bottom. Typically, sewing machines only have the feed dogs on the bottom, pulling on the bottom of the fabric. With the stretchy fabric, if it's only pulling on one side, it'll stretch it for you, and then you'll have those bubbles. You don't want those bubbles. So this makes it so that it pulls from the top and the bottom while you're sewing. So definitely get one of these. You don't need to buy them brand new. You should be able to find it used somewhere. But if you do buy it brand new, they're not too expensive. The actual construction process of the underwear is pretty simple in theory. There's only 4 seams in underwear patterns, the 2 seams on the gusset and then the side seams. And they're all very small seams. The hard part is applying the elastic, and you have to apply the elastic right or your underwear won't fit right. The tricky part is the elastic that you're adding onto the stretchy fabric, you want to stretch while you sew, but you don't want to stretch the fabric while you sew. So getting the tension correct is definitely the most difficult part of making underwear. But I don't want you to feel like that means that you shouldn't make it. Like once you get it, you got it, you know? I got 4 pairs cut out of the acacia pattern as well as the t-shirt in my size, and now I need to cut out the Wednesday cheekies. I finished cutting out the underwear and it turns out I was wrong about the pattern that I like from Emerald Erin. This is the pattern that I was talking about, but it's not the one that I thought it was. It turns out that the Friday French cuts is actually the underwear that I like because it has the front piece in one piece and the back piece in one piece. I'm making view C. I have 2 pairs cut out. That's as much fabric as I had. I noticed when I was cutting out these that they're not the pair that I thought they were because they have a seam on the back, so that there's a bit of a curve there. I guess I'm making that one as well. So I'm making 3 different kinds of underwear. Both the Emerald Erin ones are in a large and the acacias in the size 16. I already have my sewing machine all set up with the proper needle, the proper foot, and the proper thread. I'm just using Gutermann all-purpose thread in a color that matches my elastic. Now I will go through the process of making these with you. I will start with the Wednesday cheekies because I only have 1 pair of that. I don't know how much I'm going to get done today because the elastic step is very tedious and repetitive and frustrating. We'll see how much patience I have today. I'm going to use my sewing machine for all of these underwear. I'm not going to use the serger at all to show how accessible it is to make these. You don't need to have all the specialty tools, just the needle and the walking foot. So I'm going to be using a zigzag stitch, probably 2 millimeters long and 2 millimeters wide, though I will probably do some tests to see what the proper measurements are for me. The first step is to sew the gusset piece. You have a lining gusset piece and an exterior gusset piece. You're supposed to put it right sides together and then sew down the sides. I'm going to do that. I ended up using a stitch length of 3 and then the width being 2. You want the zigzag because then it stretches and the thread won't break when you stretch it. I'm supposed to turn it right side out, and then they had you sew up the back seam. It has a curve. It curves up like that, and that's so that it gives you better shape on the butt. And then I also sewed the side seam. It's basically already all together. You can see even though this one has 1 extra seam on it, it sews up really fast. The next step is to add the elastic to the leg holes. Pattern is constructed differently than most underwear patterns that I've come across because you add the elastic before you add the gusset. I've already marked on the front and the back the pins. The pattern has places where you're supposed to put pins. You add pins on there too according to the instructions, and then you match the pins on your elastic to the pins on the underwear and you sew it in place. So you can see I've sewn the fold over elastic to one's leg seam, and you can see it's much more wrinkled here because it wanted you to stretch the elastic more there, which is part of the design. I like always sewing it from the right side of the fabric. Now I'm going to fold over the elastic and then stretch slightly and stitch it down. That's that side done. Still stretchy. So I'm going to do the other side. I finished sewing on the other side of the elastic and I've marked up the waistband. You sew the waistband right sides together with a short dent straight stitch, and then you top stitch the seam allowance to one side, being sure to go forward and back at the start and the end. Now I'm going to mark the underwear again, just like how I did on the leg holes. Attach the waistband. This is the smoothest it's ever been for me making a pair of underwear. It feels kind of like a trick, like this shouldn't be this easy. Maybe it's just all my experience is accumulating together to make underwear making easier, which is nice. I usually dread this. I've been needing to make underwear for probably 5 months and I've been putting it off, but look how lovely this looks. Now I just have to add the gusset, and you do that by sewing the gusset right sides together on the front and the back, and then top stitching those seams down. There's the first pair of underwear done. I feel like my opinion on it is the same as before. I don't like the finishing technique, because there's a raw seam in the inside here, and you're supposed to top stitch the seam allowance to one side, but it's so bulky there with the fold over elastic and then the 2 layers of the gusset, so it just ends up looking very messy. But I will put these on so you can see what this looks like in case this is your idea of the perfect pair of underwear. As you could probably see in the try-on clip there, that pair was definitely too tight, which is interesting because I believe that pattern you're supposed to use non-stretch fabric, at least for the front piece, and I use stretchy fabric and it's still a little tight on my legs. That's fine because the elastic will stretch out as I wear it. They will still get used in my wardrobe. The Friday French cuts. I cut out view C in large. So this is the thong back. So now I'm going to follow the elastic cutting guide and cut out all my elastic. So this pair is constructed using, I suppose it's similar to the burrito method. You pin the gusset. This is one layer of the gusset, then the back piece, then the other layer of the gusset. And then also in here is the front sandwiched in between the gusset. And then once these 2 seams are sewn with a straight stitch, I just pull underwear through the gusset and then the gusset's finished, which is much nicer than the gusset on that other pair of underwear. I have these all sewn together and I can pull out the innards from between the gusset, and then I have a really long, strange looking thing. The next step is to sew the side seams using a straight stitch. I've already prepared the waistband. I stitched them together the way the pattern explained to. I can attach the waistband once the side seams are sewn. The waistband elastic is attached. Next step is the leg elastic, and then these ones are done. So these are much quicker to make than that other pair because there's less seams. And I just finished the sewing up of the last pair of French cut underwear, and now I will show you what these look like on, and we'll move on to the acacia underwear. What I like about the French cut underwear is that it comes up all the way to my waist. I find that very comfortable, and it's nice that it's not squeezing my hip. So this is my go-to underwear, my everyday underwear. Now we're gonna head over to the acacia underwear, which is a free pattern. I've cut it out 4 times out of that fabric that I showed you at the beginning of the video that you have not seen for a while. It is this black floral print like this. I didn't print out the instructions for these, so I have them on my phone. Pretty sure the construction is basically the same as the French cut underwear. Yes, I'm not gonna talk through this process because it's exactly the same as the last pair. I'll let you know how long it takes me to make all 4 of these. I will time myself. It's a few hours later. I just finished my last pair of the acacia underwear. Here it is. I'll put the try-on clip here. This construction was different. Emerald Erin underwear, it didn't have marks on the pattern for where to place the pins to evenly distribute the elastic. You just quartered each section and then quartered each elastic and did it that way. I did one pair where I did a practice. Once I had sewn the fold over elastic down, I trimmed the seam allowance and then folded it over again. And it's way less bulky, which is good because this one goes right over the butt. The one where I didn't do that is this one. And you can see this is the thin one, this is the thick one. Thick, thin. 2 hours and 33 minutes to do that. It's been a long day. My husband just got home. I will make the t-shirt tomorrow. It's the next day and I'm ready to work on this t-shirt. I'm going to use the Stelling Tee pattern, which is a free pattern on French Navy Patterns website. I'll link it below. I have never sewn a t-shirt before, so this is going to be a new thing for me. It has a boxy fit, which I find flattering. I personally cut out, I believe I did size E, which is for a 38-inch bust. 32-inch waist. I have my machine still set up for the underwear, so I'll just use all the same stuff, the walking foot, the stretch needle, and the thread I was using. And then it says fusible knit / stretch stay tape for reinforcing the shoulder seams. And I'm just gonna use twill tape for that. I don't have a twin needle, so my hems aren't gonna be as neat as commercial t-shirts, but I'm not super concerned about that because I wear high-waisted pants and then I tuck in my t-shirt. The seam I'm most concerned about is the neck seam because that's going to be visible. I should just be able to do the same stitch as I did for the underwear with this, which was a zigzag stitch with a 2 width and a 3 length. I sewed the shoulder seams with a 1/4 inch allowance using that zigzag stitch, and then I reinforced that by sewing 1/4 inch twill tape right beside that seam. And then I wasn't going to top stitch that seam towards the back, but I did press it towards the back. And then I sewed the neck band together on the short end. I pressed that open. I pressed that in half all the way around, and then I quartered that, and I quartered the neckline of the shirt, and I sewed that all together. The neckband was quite a bit smaller than the neck hole, so I had to stretch it a whole lot in order to insert it. So there are some bubbles, but hopefully that'll work itself out the farther I go into this pattern. The next step is optional, and it was while reading this step that I realized that I'm going to do all the optional steps because it probably results in a better end product, and I want this t-shirt to last for years and years and years. So I did the top stitching on the shoulder seams. I used a zigzag stitch. The black thread is pretty well invisible, so that's nice. Next I have to do the neckband reinforcement, which finishes the back neckline so that it's all pretty. I might end up serging this just because I want it to look really nice. This is turning out pretty nice so far. I hope it's bright enough that you can see me. It's quite a bit later. I bent my sewing needle. It's 5:30 and I live in a small town in rural Alberta, so the sewing store is closed and won't open till Monday. It's Friday. So tomorrow I'm gonna go to a different city and pick up some more stretch sewing needles. And while I'm there, if they have them, I may as well pick up a twin needle as well, and I can try playing with that. It's the next day. I just got back from the next town over and I picked up some stretch needles. I got 2 packs because it's cheaper than at my local place by about $1. They did not have twin needles, so I don't get to play with that today. But that's okay because I'm already doing new things by making the t-shirt. I sewed down the neckline reinforcement at the back of the neckline, and I'm pretty pleased with how that looks. And I also sewed down the seam allowance on the front of the neckline. Then I sewed a basting stitch along the bottom of the sleeves and the hem of the shirt, which is 2 centimeters deep. And then because I had already done serging on the neck, I figured I may as well continue that trend, and I serged the hem of the sleeves and the hem of the shirt. And then I pinned the sleeve into the side of the shirt in the arm side and matched up my notches and sewed that down with a zigzag stitch. And I serged that seam as well. And now what I have to do is fold the shirt in half like so, matching at the underarm and then sewing down the side seams. And I'm going to do that with a zigzag stitch and then go over it again with the serged seam. I just have to hem it and I'll be done. Since I don't have the twin needle, I'm just going to fold it over on the basting line like so and do a zigzag stitch like I've been doing for everything else. Well, it is complete. I sewed the side seams and then serged them. I hemmed the bottom and the sleeve. I'm very pleased with it. I think it's very good quality, especially for my first time making a t-shirt. I do think that I am eventually going to get a twin needle to do the hem better because it keeps popping out and I don't like that. So I think that if I get a twin needle, that'll fix it. It does seem like there is some puckering around the neckline. I liked making this t-shirt. I don't need that many basics in my wardrobe, but whenever I need to make another t-shirt, I will definitely use this pattern. I really enjoyed making the underwear too, which is bizarre because normally underwear really stresses me out because my machine gets mad at me, but my machine didn't even get mad at me at all throughout this whole process. The worst thing that happened was my needle bent. Normally there's like thread nests and tangles, but recently my sewing machine, I cleaned it out really well in the bottom and a bit of the shuttle casing, not like the shuttle, but the casing fell off. So I put that back on and screwed it in tight, and it seems like that fixed most of my machine issues, which is amazing because that means that sewing won't be frustrating for a bit, and I know how to fix that problem now. I'm very pleased to have 7 new pairs of underwear and a nice t-shirt to wear to work. I hope that you enjoyed the process of me making these underwear and this shirt. I hope that the variety of underwear patterns that I made was useful for you so that you could see what kind of pattern you want to make when you make your own underwear. And I hope that the video was informative enough so that you feel comfortable to start making your own underwear. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing. Currently, as I'm filming this, I'm almost at 300 subscribers. I'm 5 away. I'm very excited for that milestone. Thank you so much for sharing in my making journey. I love sharing this with you, and I hope you stick around. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.